This is the podcast for women who want to create careers and lives they love. I'm your host, Heather Fincher. Welcome to the Powerful Professional Women podcast. If you want to create a career and life you love, then you're in the right place. I'm an attorney practicing tax law in Washington, D.C., and I started this podcast because I'm on a quest to learn everything I can from successful professional women, and I want to share that journey with you. I want you to be empowered, informed, and inspired by the women on this podcast because I want us all to win. And every woman's path to success is her own. So take what works for you and set aside the rest. I'm thrilled to have Judge Elizabeth Copeland on the podcast today to tell her story and provide actionable insights on self-confidence. Appointed by both Presidents Obama and Trump, she became a judge for the United States Tax Court in 2018 for a 15-year term. A trailblazer in the legal community, Judge Copeland has impacted thousands of people who need legal representation but can't afford counsel. She started the Texas State Bar Tax Court Pro Bono program and then worked with the American Bar Association to expand that program nationwide. Not only has Judge Copeland received numerous awards as a top attorney and for outstanding achievements in pro bono activities, but she's also a wonderful, positive person I feel lucky to know. Judge Copeland, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to reach out to other women out there in the community that are looking to further their career.
Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to talk about self-confidence with you today. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. What was it like growing up for you, and where do you think you learned self-confidence?
Well, Heather, actually, that one's quite easy. I learned self-confidence from my mother. So I was raised by a single mom who had a Hispanic origin. English was a second language for her. And she had kind of a very adverse beginning to her life, and she really powered through and made a wonderful childhood for me and my brothers. She faced a lot of adversity. Her father died when she was only 18 months old, her stepfather when she was 12, and her mom when she was 16. She got pregnant when she was 16 and had to quit high school to start raising a family. She unfortunately was married to a very abusive man and woke up to that fact at some relatively early point and stood up for herself, left that relationship, and started waitressing to provide for her family. She was a very, very strong woman, and she was a great role model. She always told me that I was brilliant and I could do anything. She always said that and always believed in me, which kind of made me believe in myself. My mom really taught me to be independent and a self-thinker. And I also want to mention that one of the interesting things about my background with my mother and my family is that we moved a lot. I never went to the same school for more than 2, maybe 3 years. And I went to 3 different high schools. So what that meant was I had to become good at making friends and adapting to a new environment very young and very often. So I think that also contributed to my having a self-confidence. And I think one of the things in my background that kind of illustrates that a little is when I started out at UT as a freshman, I was actually a chemistry teacher. And I really discovered that was not my passion. I did not care for being in the lab, and I really wanted more interaction with people. So I explored some other opportunities and ended up transitioning to the business school with a degree in accounting. After UT undergraduate, I did get my CPA certification. I practiced as an accountant for several years with EY. And then ultimately followed the lead of one of the women that I admired very much, and that was a woman by the name of Hattie Caraway, who in 1932 was elected the first elected female senator. And I figured she could go to law school, maybe so could I. So I left my degree. I left my very lovely job that I loved and started law school at UT. And then ultimately, while I was in law school, I clerked for uh, Justice Eugene Cook with Texas Supreme Court. And then I ended up, upon graduation, clerking for Judge Marianne Cohen, Chief Judge Marianne Cohen later. But
And
Judge
you were the first in your family, right? You were the first in your family to
very first in my immediately family to graduate from high school, much less graduate from college and graduate from law school. So yes,
Yeah. Wow. Tell us more. Tell us a story about that can kind of illustrate when you were developing self-confidence or practicing it at some point in your life.
when I was very young, I was volunteered to give a 2-day speech on the contract with America. And I was very, very new to the legal profession. I was mortified and nervous, and I did get through it. I think maybe I'm overly critical, but I think I was terrible. And I powered through, I got through it, but it actually was such a great learning experience for me because I was able to do it. I was able to put myself out there. I was able to get through it. I was able to convey the message, the important stuff that people needed to know in the audience. Maybe not as funny or as as I definitely did it cheerfully, but not as funny and outgoing as I am now. But I think that is just an illustration of just trusting in yourself and knowing you can do it and doing the hard task even when it's
Uncomfortable, and you may not be as skilled as you want to be someday, but you took it on and you put yourself in the situation. And some might say you were voluntold, but hey, you said yes.
I did.
No matter what your performance was, you dug deep, and I just see that you were confident in that. You're like, I can get through this the best that I can, and it sounds like you learned from it because you're very powerful, clear.
I'm a good speaker now, but I was not then.
Tell us more now. So after those after that experience, and as you've developed, what are you seeing? Like, how are you transformed around self-confidence? How have you grown, and what have you learned? How can you illustrate kind of the impacts on your self-confidence?
Sure, I appreciate that, Heather. And I really I think the things that I've learned is mainly to trust myself, even when I'm uncomfortable. Just to be more self-confident and take on tasks that I might not otherwise take on, and have the confidence that I can get through it. I also take things in little pieces. Like, I mean, that's a really important life skill. It may seem like a crazy, overwhelming task, but you just start at the first step and keep on going and plug on through. And I do think self-confidence helps you do that, and it helps you manage difficult, big projects, big tasks. Very intertwined with that is the ability to be patient and to be understanding. So you have to recognize that in life, you're going to come across different personalities, different people, different things. And you always have to adapt and recognize that everybody has a different perspective, but you can respect that while still respecting yourself. Still knowing that you have worth yourself, and even though we might not always agree on things, it helps to know someone else has a different perspective and just be able to listen and appreciate it and think about what they're saying and then evaluate it in your own regard. I think that is a very positive aspect of self-confidence that I think comes through. And of course, you had mentioned in the opening that I had been nominated by 2 separate presidents and 2 separate administrations before I.
Tell us about that experience. And for anyone who doesn't quite understand the process of becoming a tax corp, feel free to share what that means too.
I will. So the tax court judges are the federal judges, and were appointed by the president. We're nominated by the president. We have to go through a vetting process. In particular, for the United States Tax Court, we go through the Senate Finance Committee rather than the Senate Judiciary Committee. But you have to go through a committee vote to get out your nomination approved for a full vote. So I did that. I was nominated by President Obama. I went to the Senate Finance Committee. I had hearings. I was voted out of committee. And then my vote just sat on the Senate floor along with a lot of other judges, for waiting for a floor vote that never came. So my nomination expired, and I was faced with the very difficult decision of what to do next. And I decided to reach out to the transition team and see if they would be interested in renominating me. I will admit that there were a lot of people that suggested I not even do that because it was an impossible task to be renominated by a different administration. But I was one of the very, very few judges who were successful and received a renomination. And then another Senate Finance Committee hearing again voted out unanimously, and finally my floor vote. So I became a sitting federal judge after that.
Oh, congratulations. What a process that must have been internally for you. How did you get through it?
Well, as many people like to say, I had when I found out my nomination had expired, I had a good cry, and then I put on my big girl panties and I went back to work and just started doing what I was good at again. Because there was really nothing else I could do. And it's one of the things that I hope young attorneys out there know is that sometimes you take on tasks and you might fail. And that's okay. You just have to learn from your mistakes and move on. Failures is just a part of life. Unless you own up to them, own up to what you've done, and you accept what you've done and learn from it, then it's okay. And you can continue to trudge on. And going with your theme, Heather, I think that does mean you have to have the self-confidence in yourself to keep on moving forward.
Yes. Now, on self-confidence specifically, tell us a fun story. I seem to remember that you don't necessarily take no for an answer sometimes. You'll just keep pushing forward. And was there something earlier in your career at a law firm around pantsuits?
Yes, thank you, Heather. So,
I want to thank this episode's sponsor, Castellanos LLP, a leading law firm in tax controversy, white-collar criminal defense, and government negotiations with offices in New York City and Washington, D.C. Visit www.kflaw.com.
When I first started out, I was working for a lovely law firm in San Antonio, medium-sized law firm. And I was working in the tax department, and they had a policy, and this will be shocking to a few people nowadays, but they had a policy that women could not wear pantsuits. We couldn't wear pants, period. And so I thought that was very strange and not appropriate. And so I approached the only female partner to take it up with the management committee, and she was unsuccessful in getting the policy changed. So I did what every first year female associate would do, right? I decided I would interview every law firm in San Antonio, every major law firm in San Antonio, and find out what their policy was regarding.
Of course, who wouldn't do that?
Who wouldn't do that? And I found out that we were the anomaly. We were the only one that had such a restriction. So I put it together and I presented it to the firm management committee, and they immediately changed the policy. And I immediately went out and bought a pantsuit from the Limited.
Oh, what a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you have many more stories, probably with your experience in the law firm, but
I do, and I'm gonna mention this now because I had a lovely experience in my law firm. They're very supportive of women.
Cool.
Yeah, but I did have another experience with that same law firm where they were underpaying their associates, particularly the females. And so I approached the head of the tax department and said, you're going to start losing talent, and you don't want that, including me.
Probably you, I was going to say.
Yeah, including me. And so I just made them aware that they were not in the correct realm of what other firms were paying, and they looked into it immediately, I have to say, and we all got immediate raises, and everybody was very thankful. But just so you know, this same law firm, again, very supportive of women. They made me partner while I was on maternity leave. So that's kind of unheard of. And that was way back in the day. That was a long time ago. So I hate to show my age, but yeah, it's more than 25 years ago.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So just looking at what I see and the stories you're sharing around self-confidence is something wasn't working for you in your career, in your job, and so you took steps to see if it could be addressed, and then when it wasn't addressed outside of you, you took responsibility and ownership and were confident in yourself to walk up to every law firm in your city, or walk to and speak to the leadership of the firm and just say that I see something here that's not working, and you presented in different ways what you saw and what you wanted and asked for. So just want to point out the self-confidence there to do that in an effective way too is really, really wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I know you also wanted me to talk about my treasured accomplishment.
Yes,
It
please.
also required self-confidence and passion. And that is that I was on the leadership of the State Bar of Texas tax section. And I was a council member, and I was kind of transitioning off. My term was up. And I had previously, just a little backdrop, had recognized that there was a huge problem in the United States tax court with unrepresented taxpayers not receiving representation in their tax court trials. And I knew of a program that Karen Hawkins had done in California. And so when I was transitioning off of the council, the new incoming chair approached me and said he wanted to do something about the pro bono, the underrepresented taxpayer problem. I thought, this is a huge, unique opportunity. We need to take advantage of this. We need to do this. We need to expand this program. So I created the first statewide tax court pro bono program where we provided free volunteer assistance to unrepresented taxpayers at the tax court calendar call. I'm going to go a little deeper for those of you in your audience that don't know much about the tax court, but the United States tax court is based in Washington, D.C., and we travel around the country hearing cases through cities all throughout the country. And in particular, in Texas, where I practice, we had 5 separate cities that the tax court would sit. And so I created a program that provided volunteer attorneys at all 5 cities. And so it was a statewide program, and I had more volunteers. I mean, once I got it off the ground, which I was so proud of, we had more volunteers than we even needed. It was just such a fabulous program, and it really served a need, and it served a purpose. And not only that, it was very rewarding for me. Personally, it's the only time in my career that I've been called an angel straight from heaven by a taxpayer who was helped by our program. And I have been called an angel by other low-income taxpayers that we helped. And so it was like a recognition of a need and having the self-confidence to just see it through. And I will be honest with you, it involved a lot of coordination with the United States Tax Court because they didn't have a similar program authorized in the past, and they were coming up with new rules for such programs. And so I was the very first applicant when their new rules came out. And as a result of that, actually, the American Bar Association section taxation approached me for my materials.
Mhm.
And I gladly turned them over, shared them with them, and then also to be as a point person when people were trying to set up similar programs through their state bar. Very successful program. It still exists today. It's still operational today, and a lot of state bars have taken on the lead and also set up similar
Right.
programs.
I mean, you created the template that's used all around the country now and is impacting, like I said before, like thousands and thousands of lives. So
I'm very proud
really
of that.
amazing work. You should be very proud of that. And again, acknowledging what it took for you to say, sure, I'll take that on. I'll create this entire program from the ground up and then bring it national. Um, Really fantastic and
And I'm
so
very thankful
grateful.
for Karen Kins, who also assisted by having the concept to begin with. And
Yes, yes, yes. Judge, before we wrap up this episode, is there anything else, any actionable insights you'd like to share? Anything else you'd like to leave with our audience around self-confidence?
well, yes, and I think I'm gonna kind of tie in my first story about being volunteered for the speech. With I know you had wanted to know whether I ever impacted someone else, so I'm going to tell a story about a continuing legal education seminar that I was at for tax because that's my area, and I was watching this very young attorney present her this on this very difficult topic and doing just a fabulous job. So after the presentation was complete, I went up to her at the break and I just told her how fabulous she had done and how impressed I was with her. And she looked at me directly and said, "You know, you are the reason I was up there." And I said, "What do you mean?" So she had said that I had been talking to a group of young attorneys and I told them that in furtherance of their career, they should take a risk, they should give speeches, and they're going to be terrified and it's going to be okay. And so she took my advice and she did it and she just did a fabulous job. So
Oh, beautiful. And then you saw her, acknowledged her for it, and then she gave you
so she gave me that feedback. That was nice. It's not often you get feedback when you actually help someone along. So it is really special.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you, Judge Copeland, for sharing all of these wonderful stories and experiences and insights with us. I'm also grateful for each of our listeners. Thank you for being here. And those of you watching on YouTube, I hope you leave this episode inspired and empowered to be your most powerful professional self.